It's early morning in Myko. A new day begins in a Somali village. At first sight, it all seems very pleasant, but it's just another day where the struggle for food is on top of the agenda. Maryam Abdul Kadir is a typical example of a child in Somalia. She's 13 years old, and she's right now, 6 in the morning, preparing breakfast for her younger sisters, brothers and cousins. Food for the young consists of boiled bananas and has to be ready in a rush so that Maryam Abdul Kadir can get to the fields to fetch hay, which she hopefully will be able to sell at the nearby market. Life is hard. I work all day. How much money do you make? I make 3,000 to 4,000 shillings. Myko is a traditional Somali village. The clan consists of 250 families, but right now an additional 100 families are living here who also need to be fed. Families on the run from troubled areas in Somalia. The harvest has failed. The fields have been flooded and the people can't support themselves. They're 100% depending on help from the outside community. Going to school is something most children here only dream about. Ahmey Eymooy is the leader of the village and has been for the past 34 years. The clan he's in charge of has done everything possible to avoid the violence of the past many years. But even though the village hasn't been directly involved in the fighting, the times of war and chaos has strongly affected the residents. They're now depending on unpredictable farming where drought is followed by floods.
In this area there used to be factories producing sugar and oil. People had jobs, but things have changed during the 17 years of chaos. People used to be peaceful. There was no war. Everyone farmed the land and there was no one fighting each other. It was a better life. Now it's just a war. One constantly has to be aware of the war.
Looking closer at the facts in Somalia, it draws a picture of a country frighteningly far away from our lives in the Western world. For every 1,000 child born in Somalia, only 775 will live to celebrate their 5th birthday. In an average Western country, the number is 995. Unfortunately, Maryam Abdul Kadir fits very well into the statistics. She is supposed to have 9 siblings, but the reality is that one died at birth with Maryam's mother. 2 others died of hunger before Maryam was born. I look after the little ones because my mother died.
Somalia is in a few words best described as a land of chaos, without official authorities in 16 years, without any kind of institution helping the people, the basic elements of health, education and security. Somalia has been governed by militant leaders for 16 years. It is the one country in the world that has been without official authorities the longest, and it means that the foundation of help, which normally is present even in very poor African countries, is non-existent in Somalia.
At the moment, the 14th attempt of establishing peace is negotiated to stop the chaos that has left the country the worst place in the world. Back in 1991, the country was virtually falling apart. Different clans were fighting for the power over the capital, Mogadishu. Quickly the fighting spread to most of Somalia, resulting in death and destruction. The international community watched silently, while more than 200,000 people died of famine. Only few tried to help.
And what I see when I look at the port and when I look at the airport is everyday empty spaces, nobody coming in even to study it, no diplomatic representations, no consular officials. It's all as though Somalia didn't exist.
By the end of 1992, the terrifying pictures in the news had made the needed impact on the international community. With the program Restore Hope, the President of the United States at the time, declared that no one should be hungry by Christmas in Somalia. Thousands of American soldiers were sent to Mogadishu. The program ended in a catastrophe. Pictures of cheering Somalis on shut-down wrecks of helicopters and the dead bodies of American soldiers dragged around the streets of Mogadishu left the international community in a state of shock. It was hard to find anyone willing to help the citizens of Somalia after that. International aid and sponsors disappeared. This was a conflict out of control, and no one wanted to get involved.
I pray to God for the Somali people. I pray that they will find a way to raise themselves out of this anarchy and turmoil and to build some kind of society based on love instead of based on the gun.
Even today, it is still the power weapons that control Somalia, and the situation is nearly as hopeless as then.
When Somalia collapsed in the beginning of the 90s, it wasn't just the central authorities which ceased to function. All the major international help organizations and bilateral sponsors withdrew from Somalia, and the country was basically only kept going on humanitarian aid. Gone was all the help to rebuild the country, and the long-term help needed to maintain the development in Somalia disappeared.
Different clans were fighting each other, and an Islamic group working for the introduction of the Sharia law took control of large parts of the country in June 2006. Half a year later, they were expelled by Ethiopian forces, which together with an interim government tried to create peace in Somalia, but so far with limited success. Every day you hear of killings, attacks from Islamic extremists, assaults, seizure of ships and attacks on the few reporters trying to tell what is going on in Somalia. The citizens of Mogadishu are still fleeing the capital, and the area from where Horsant is reporting around the town Johar, north of Mogadishu. You only show up with the camera after the local warlord, or governor as he calls himself, has given his permission. One of the few places where the sorely tried citizens of Mogadishu can escape to is a refugee camp, Sheikh Omar, in the town Johar, 90 kilometers or 3 days of walking from the capital. We sincerely hope that the international community will help us. Many weak children and elders live here, all suffering malnutrition. Approximately 800 families live here under conditions hard to believe. This is one of the children with problems. The child is 8 months old. It's a twin. I cannot find food for my children. What are you doing? This is the way to examine how malnourished the child is. 100,000 of people have been forced away from their homes and are living under miserable conditions in camps like the one you see behind me. This area was once known as the granary of Somalia. Today, 17% of all children are suffering from malnutrition.
Udover at have været i en kronisk konfliktsituation med krigsherrer, så har Somalia været ramt ekstra hårdt.
In addition to the constant situation of war, Somalia has been hit hard with natural disasters the last 2 years. We have had the worst drought in 10 years in 2006, which followed by a serious flooding, which again was followed by more violent fighting in Mogadishu. This sent approximately 500,000 people on the run into this area. After that, we had the repercussions of flooding with diarrhea and cholera, which killed thousands in the same areas. Right now the situation is that people have not been able to sow, not been able to harvest, and consequently not had their traditional crops, their normal income.
deres normale indtægter.
As a result, the prices on food has tripled on the local market during just a few months, which means that we are now in an extraordinary difficult situation, even seen with Somali eyes.
Exceptionel situation, selv under Somali-forhold.
The people living in camps are in most ways on their own. This woman has come from Mogadishu with her husband and 4 children. The survival of the family depends on her ability to sell her self-made pottery. If she's lucky, she'll be able to make what is equivalent to £1 on a pot. It's a long and demanding process. It takes 7 days to make them. Not until then can I go to the market and sell them. In the meantime, we have nothing to eat. Camp Shaigomar is a local initiative, and the little money available to help the refugees primarily come from Somalis abroad and Red Cross, which twice in the past 9 months has helped with food supplies. The serious famine threatening right now has made UNICEF deliver food supplies for the youngest children, but the help is far from sufficient.
Malnutrition rates of about slightly about 9%, 10%, 12, 11%, 12%. Those malnutrition rates are the ones that are normally recorded in the neighboring countries, in Kenya, in Ethiopia, in Darfur. Currently, we are talking about 13, 14% malnutrition, but in Somalia, we are talking about 70% malnutrition, and it's getting closer to 20%. So, nutrition crisis and overall general humanitarian crisis in Somalia seems more dire than the other countries, and also if you really consider the access to the people in need of assistance.
Relief work is a dangerous and expensive business in Somalia, and many areas are completely cut off from receiving any help at all. This is a group of some of the most needing people receiving help for the first time. Every family receives 2 sacks of corn flour, 10 kilos of beans, 5 kilos of oat, and 3 liters of oil.
It's very hard with constant conflicts, large number of militias, all the time roadblocks and so forth. It's dangerous, it's tough, it's complicated, and it's expensive. We try to reach people with various forms of help, food, water, and extensive contribution to children and their mother suffering the most. But it is not enough at all. At the moment we are only capable of reaching a little less than half the people who need help.
One thing is life in the refugee camps, which is the reality for close to 10% of the Somali population, approximately 700,000 people. One would think that there's no worse place to live than in the contemporary camps. But the truth is that life in the many villages is so hard that it makes some settle in the camps, hoping to get help from the outside world. The population of Somalia is somewhere between 7 and 9 million inhabitants. Most of the country is covered in barren sandy soil. Most people live along the coastline or river banks. The village of Myko is on the river Shabelle, 80 kilometers north of Mogadishu. Ahmey Osman has lived his entire life in Myko, and he's among the few lucky ones who twice a week have the chance to work and make a little money.
Me and my friends, we are working as day laborer in the farm industry. We can make 15,000 for a full day of work. After work, we spend the money on food. We buy corn, beans, sugar and oil.
He's 1 out of 10 siblings in a family where only one had the chance of going to school. It's a family of farmers, and they struggle to cultivate their land, but it's against all odds when drought is followed by flooding. The flooding means that the village has lost the crop, but also that nearly all the children has caught bilharziosis, a parasite living in dirty waters. Ahmed's dad is 83 years of age. He's trying to appear a strong father by hunting a couple of times every month, but this family is like the rest of the village, helpless without help from the outside world. 4 boxes of grapes are 1,400. How much is 25 boxes of grapes? No matter who we speak to in Myko, they all share the same dream, young and old. They would like to be educated. They know that it's the only way out of the poverty. It's good to learn something and appreciating to learn.
I dream of taking a high education. I have heard that there are 75 languages in the world, and I wish to learn some of them.
You'd be surprised, but Myko actually has a school. Maryam went there until her mother died. She was 8 years at the time. The school is Myko is free for everyone because there's no teacher getting paid. 7 adults from the village take turns in teaching whenever they have the time to do so. But to most of the children, going to school is not an option. After all, food is more important than school, which is why most children will be sent to work instead. And while some of the kids are studying math, Ahmey is reading.
What upset me the most is seeing other kids going to school, but I can't afford it. That's made me really sad.
It seems like a huge gap between the life of a Western teenager in a war-stricken Somalia and life in a mud hut. But even though this is the reality, the knowledge of the outside world and its possibilities is very much present. Everyone knows that education is the solution, and also here it's obvious that boys will be boys. Ahmed, like most other boys, always wanted to be a professional soccer player.
Everyone in the world loved Manchester United and Brazil.
The boys in the village listen to the games on the radio, and in quieter times they walk into the nearest town, where they are able to watch the game on the television for 2 pence. But daily life right now is far from those dreams. It's mostly about surviving. Maryam, aged 13, is being the mother of the family in cooperation with her grandmother after her mother died. Her joys are very much down to earth. Can anything make you happy? Yes. What is it? If prices on grass go up. When Maryam came back from the market, she had made 4,000 shillings on selling grass to the cows of the nomads. That is just a little more than 10 pence. For that amount of money, she bought half a cup of milk and 150 grams of sugar. A normal day in Myko has come to an end. Ahmey is down in the fields and preparing for one of the few pleasures he has during the day. He's on his way to the village mosque. Here everyone are faithful Muslims. And one of the few things that, in spite of everything, actually works in the village is the Quran school. All children spend the early morning hours reciting the Quran.
Being in the mosque is nice. I have no other place to learn. I have no other place to go and learn, and the only thing I can read is the Quran. I study the Quran until I go back to work or spend time with my